All right. Now that we've covered, I don't even know what to really say about that. Dan, you got one last one in you?
I do indeed. Ooh. The subject of my second story is nothing to do with Japan, thank Christ, but we are going back across the goddamn United States of America.
Yep.
Yeah!
To the wonderful state of Kentucky.
Where they actually do the yeehaw, so.
Yeah.
If you're not
Yay, I got it right!
yeah.
So, in the year 1881, in Ashland, new word, Kentucky.
It's going to be a running gag now, I love it.
Every time we message one another, I'm not even putting spaces anymore. I'm just going to write a word and then put new word, then write a word and then put new word. It's going to take me many months to type out a message.
A, new word. The, new word. Spaceship, new word.
If you have an iPhone, you can set it up so it automatically puts it so it takes you less time. Just double hit the space bar.
I feel like one of my aunts.
Period.
The first time one of my aunts got a phone, she texted me and she didn't know how to do the space, so it was all just ampersand. So it was literally hello ampersand Daniel ampersand oh ampersand R ampersand you.
Hello and Dan and R and you and Jesus.
New.
All right, let's give this story the respect it deserves, because I read a little bit of it and it's horrifying.
Yeah, yeah. This is the clean version of some of it too. That's the thing. Like it's
okay.
Because some of it was just like I'm not putting some. Like I'll explain. Anyway, sorry. So,
go ahead.
1881, Ashland, Kentucky. A Mrs. J.W. Gibbons leaves her family home on the 23rd of December, leaving her 18-year-old son Robert, who was a crippled boy who had lost one of his legs in a railroad accident, her daughter Fanny, who was 14 years old at the time, and their neighbour's daughter Emma Cariso, otherwise known as Emma Thomas due to her stepfather's surname being Thomas or Cariso. Couldn't nail it down which one, so anyway, we keep her as Cariso. Only to return on Christmas Eve to find her home burned to the ground and all three children dead. Emma's mother lived next door, noticed the flames coming from the house that her daughter was over visiting at around 5 or 6 a.m. on Christmas Eve. They sounded the alarm and neighbours rushed to the home and managed to remove the three children, not knowing when they entered the house, obviously, that they would find them having already been murdered. Physicians who arrived on the scene examined the bodies to discover that all three children had their skulls smashed in, which they determined to be the official cause of death, and further evidence showed that two of the girls had been brutally sexually assaulted. They concluded that...
Go ahead. So the evidence of them being sexually assaulted, that would take a bit of invasiveness, but...
Oh yeah,
they evidence to know that their heads were smashed in. I mean,
do
you really have to look over the bodies and be like,
That's the thing, though. As far as I'm aware, with all these sort of things, they officially, like, if you or I went over and went, "Hey, his head smashed in, this is how he died," they were not officials. We can't officially make that call. Yeah, so they called that there and then, and it was after further examination. And it's not like they were sitting. It's not like they dragged him out and then went. Like they followed all the proper protocols apparently for 1800 Wild West. Yeah, like
the person's just dying there. There's a rock on their head. I think he died from a bullet wound.
Yeah, well, my
no way.
My assumption as to how they could possibly tell straight off the bat would be blood.
Yeah.
Realistically. Because
unless it all got burnt away. I mean, how
charred
up were they?
Not really. That's the thing as well, right? Okay. So, they
we'll
concluded that the fire was lit in order to cover the crimes. All right. So, I get onto the whole thing about the fire in a bit. So, a U.S. state marshal by the name of Heflin and a detective. Where was Heflin? Anyway, U.S. State Marshal, I have down here, is by the name of Heflin. And a detective who was dispatched from Ohio by the name of J.B. Norris, yeah, I did get them the right way around, were assigned to the case. And Norris quickly jumped to the assumption that it was the Gibbons' father, John Gibbons, who was mainly absent from their lives, that had conducted the heinous crimes. But he was exonerated on the 31st of December. He was found to have been in a remote area of West Virginia, and he had proof that he was there at the time. So,
if he's not in their lives, why would he come murder 3 kids?
Well, he kind of is and he isn't. They just got on better living separately, and but he wasn't really around too often. So anyway, so Phil, what happened on the night of December 23rd, 1881 in Ashland? I hear you ask.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were asking him.
No,
I was like, I don't know.
No,
I wasn't there.
Tell you, don't worry.
I was not even a gleam in my grandfather's eye at that point.
Fair enough. So, all was revealed when a man by the name of George Ellis entered a general store to buy a cigar. He was a regular customer and known to the owner, Mr. Powell, who struck up a conversation with Ellis stating that John Gibbons had been exonerated and he was curious who Ellis thought might have committed the act. Ellis allegedly turned pale, began to tremble, and then ran out of the store, but he was muttering something to do with state evidence when he left. So Ellis apparently walked around the streets for hours, and eventually he made his way to the hotel where Marshal Heflin was staying. He informed Heflin of the events that unfolded under the remit that he would receive a lesser punishment under state's evidence, which apparently dictates that anyone guilty of a crime could inform on others involved in it in a bid to appeal for a lesser sentence than the other guilty parties.
Well, sure.
So basically, snitch on your compadres and partners in crime.
You cut a deal, yeah.
You cut a deal, you get a lesser sentence.
Yeah.
So basically the marshal had been through this sort of thing before, knew well what to do. He got a stenographer down, he got a witness in, also to take a statement directly from Ellis. There were 2 versions of a statement written. One of them is a more
graphic.
One of them was more graphic. One of them was kind of changed up a little bit to not be quite as graphic. So the not quite as graphic one is the one that I'm reading out, which is apparently this is one of the 2 records taken by the stenographer. But I can't guarantee that this is 100% exactly what was written by the stenographer. But anyway, so what Ellis allegedly stated was, a few evenings prior to the 24th, I met Kraft, which is a gentleman he knows, who stated that he was going to see Fanny Gibbons and take her some black candy, and that he was going to have intercourse with her. He wanted me to come along. Now, I don't know what black candy is. I'm assuming it's licorice.
The old black candy.
No, I'm assuming it's licorice. So,
I'm hoping it is.
Yeah, so,
it's like, what's wrong with
maybe that's what he calls himself.
It's all black.
The original black candy. So at about midnight on the fatal night, we all started, Kraft, Neil and myself. When we got to the house, Kraft raised the window with an old axe and stepped in first. Neil followed and I stayed behind on the porch, and afterwards I went in. Robbie, the 18-year-old cripple boy, was the first to arouse from bed and started to get up when Kraft said, "You had better lie still." Kraft then went to the bed where the 2 girls were sleeping and began to take improper liberties with them. Robbie said, "You had better stay away from there," when Kraft hit him with the axe. He fell back on the lounge, then plunged forward and fell fully 6 feet from the bed under the stairs where he was found. The girls screamed when Kraft jumped out. The girls screamed when Kraft jumped onto the bed, and they both said, "George Kraft, what are you here for?" Emma also started to jump from the bed when Neil choked her and pulled her onto the floor. She fought him, She fought him, and I held her while he outraged her. Neil then struck her in the head with a big end of a crowbar, and she died instantly after throwing up her hands. Kraft also had some trouble with Fanny and called on me to help him. He then outraged and killed her. Neil proposed killing the girls, and after they were dead, I took some coal oil, poured it over the bodies, set fire to it with a match, and we then left the house. So that's the end of his statement. Now, the thing is, though, it's believed that when it comes to the oil thing, that they did find traces of coal oil on their garments.
Sure.
And that was set alight and was burns on it, but it didn't take. And it's thought that somebody then returned and then lit fire to the house.
Saw that the house
that didn't work,
catch on fire, and then
went back
I gotta do it
and
again.
just lit the actual house on fire.
Sure.
So Ellis would also claim that the two perpetrators had made comments months before the incident stating that they would have carnal communications with the girls before Christmas. Kraft and Neil, they all worked together in like a brickyard or some shit. So Kraft and Neil were both arrested and taken to jail in Catletsburg, which is about 5 miles away from town. Allegedly, all three were placed in the same cell overnight, which is a bit stupid. The following day, surprise, surprise, Ellis renounced his confession, but it was all a little bit too late. He'd already gone down on record at that stage. Yeah. So while the arrests and confessions were not yet public knowledge, it's a small town, word spread like wildfire, and very soon there was rumbles and talks of vigilante justice. Mm-hmm. So officials received reports of a mob being formed in Ashland with plans to raid the courthouse to seize the 3 prisoners. The courts deemed that the 3 should be sent to Lexington to be jailed safely and made their way there via steamboat down the river, but the mob had gotten word of this and a chase ensued. They managed to basically arrive in Lexington without incident. So 2 boats, chase? Yeah.
I just want to see a couple people in their rowboats, running on the side with their buggies too, just chasing after this rowboat, and they're like, "Oh dear God, they're catching!"
It's going down the wrong
Put more steam on! Throw more steam!
Yeah, put more steam on
more coal!
Pit maneuver!
Alright, so they got there without incident.